Hello, students. I want to give you an overview of your annotated bibliography assignments because a lot of times students have not had to complete one before, so it's really new to them. And I think sometimes, like I've said in past videos, just hearing someone talk it through, especially if you're an auditory learner, which I tend to be, sometimes called an oral learner, it just helps to hear it. It's just another way to get the information and feel reassured. So this is your annotated bibliography assignment on the screen right now. Yours might look a little bit different. I'm in edit mode in my Blackboard shell, so things might appear slightly changed to you. But this is the assignment. So the basics of this assignment, this is assignment 3 and it is connected to assignment 4. Assignment 3 is called the annotated bibliography, and assignment 4, which if I go backwards in this week, you can at least see the folder for it. I haven't yet filled in the assignment itself. Assignment 4 is going to be your argument essay. So rhetorical analysis, that first assignment you did, is where you're looking at someone else's argument and you're analyzing it. You're trying to understand how they approached an argument using ethos, pathos, logos, evidence, claims, assumptions. And now it's going to be your turn, but your turn kind of comes about slowly and doesn't really come about until assignment 4. Assignment 3 is the prep for assignment 4. So when you hear the words annotated bibliography, this is not an essay. This is a completely different animal. This is basically where you're going to, in this annotated bibliography, find a topic, research it, and gather sources for what will eventually become your evidence in your argument essay. You're just going to learn about a topic, is the most informal, brief way I can put it. So I'm going to go through the assignment sheet itself, and then I'm going to go through a brief PowerPoint, and there'll be a little bit of overlap, but hopefully not so much that it seems redundant or repetitive. So I like this quote by Zora Neale Hurston: "Research is formalized curiosity. It is poking and prying with a purpose." Because I'm going to show you a Pete Holmes little comedy sketch in a little while here, and I love the idea of an annotated bibliography. I think if I could do anything for the rest of my life, it would just be like if I could find a job that did this, which is just like, here, find a topic you're interested in and research it. Because that's what a lot of us do anyway. That's how we go down our rabbit holes of the internet. Maybe research to you might be clicking on YouTube videos or taking BuzzFeed quizzes or whatever the case may be. For me, it's a little bit more academic. I like those kind of nerdy sources that give me a lot of information and make me feel knowledgeable. But, and maybe you're like that too. I don't know you. So I'm just giving voice to lots of different perspectives. But what this articulates to me is this idea that research is really where we have a question and we go out and we try to find answers to that question. So you're going to compose a research question, and in the PowerPoint I'll talk about what that is and give you some examples of what will work for your research question. But that is up to you. So you get to drive your own research, which is what students often say is their favorite part of ENC 2300 or any English class, is when they get to choose their own topics. There are, of course, parameters, but you have large parameters. That's probably not the word I want to say. You have a lot of room in those parameters to work. And then create an annotated bibliography based on your research question. So I'm going to give you an idea of what this looks like briefly, and you might be confused, but at least it'll give you a visual to go with it, because I want to give you some information, but not enough to confuse you just yet. So this is a little bit older. You can see this is 2011, so this is from an older version of MLA, so the citations will look a bit different in yours now. But this student, she was researching the question. I still remember her aunt had worked as a trainer at SeaWorld, and this was right after Blackfish. I don't know if you remember that documentary had come out where people were really upset with SeaWorld and saying, that keeping whales in captivity was not only harmful to the whales themselves, but it was putting trainers in just this horrible, awful situation where somebody's bound to get hurt. And so this student Amber wanted to kind of find out if that the truth, because she had heard, differing things all around her from her aunt and from other people. So the research question she ended up with, we had to talk through it because it didn't come fully formed to her, but it was basically, should marine mammals be kept in captivity? And again, when I say that question didn't come fully formed to her that way, that was the question that ended up having the keywords necessary to help her find a lot of good sources and direct her thesis when she got to the argument essay. But initially, we were just kind of looking at like SeaWorld and ethics, is what we were typing into Google and other places and the library databases, or whales and safety or things like that. And then we found, oh, all these sources, they don't call them whales, they talk about marine mammals. So it's not just whales, it's dolphins also. And they will call them captivity, not just theme parks, because they're going into aquariums as well. So we found these word choices that the people who were studying this issue and arguing about it kept using, and we said, oh, okay, so we want to use the word choice of the topic, and that's called the discourse. Discourse, and that's the vocabulary of your topic, which you are going to want to be able to use and adopt and apply when you eventually argue it. So, part of the research process often is figuring out what terminology to use in your research question and what terminology to use in your searches. Because Google's wonderful, you can type in like, oh, three-headed giraffes with purple stripes, and probably find a million sources, even if that's a wild guess at what you're talking about. You can probably find something. But as you get into the library databases and as you get into the upper echelon of sources, those creme de la creme of credible sources, you are going to want to use more specific vocabulary to talk about your issue. So anyway, that's kind of the 10,000 foot high look overview of her research topic and how she started to come to this. So she came to it, she got her research question settled, and I'm making this sound like it just happened in about 30 seconds, but this happened over a period of probably a week of her and I talking and going back and forth and her research. And eventually she took the question out there, and this is what she composed. This is her annotated bibliography. So you'll see everyone's going to have the same title, annotated bibliography. I know it's pretty boring, but you'll get to make up a more nuanced title that reflects your ideas when you get to your argument essay. And then everyone's going to have an MLA citation, though yours is going to be an 8th edition. This is the old 7th edition. And then this is one of her sources that she found called Abusement Parks Harm Marine Mammals from USA Today magazine, and it was in the database Academic Search Complete. So when you find sources through the database, that should be identified in the citation itself. Even in the 8th edition, they do identify that. So that's how I'm going to know when I say you have to have a minimum number of sources from the database. That's where I'm going to be able to tell, okay, Joe Schmo has his, required number of sources from the databases. If I don't see that, then I might assume that it's from the internet. I would also see a URL that reflects, www.foxnews.com or whatever it is, to let me know that it's not from the database, it's from an internet. It's the internet that you got it from. So we'll have a separate little video or discussion or resource on how to create these MLA citations. I'm not going to just say, go create them. There are already some guides that are posted in Blackboard, and I will go through a little bit of a helpful video, hopefully to give you a little bit more instruction. And the wonderful thing about the databases that my online students, they prove to me sometimes that they don't watch or listen to my videos, or at least not carefully, is that in one of the videos where I'm showing you how to conduct research in the databases, I show you that the databases give you the MLA citation and all you have to do is copy and paste it. So that's another advantage of using the databases over using the internet, is that you just go to that MLA cite button database, and it pops up for you. Just make sure you're in MLA, copy and paste, and make sure you don't lose your formatting. Again, I show you how to do all this in that other video where I'm showing you how to conduct research in the library databases, but somehow this gets lost sometimes for my online students, and I think it's because they're either like superficially listening to the video or not listening to them at all. So here is the annotation itself. This is what we call this paragraph, we the English teachers and the librarians. And this paragraph, this particular one, has most of the criteria I expect of you in it. But I've added a little bit more recently to it because I want students to not only explore and analyze the source itself, but I want to hear your response from to the source. And so I'll show you an example like that in a minute, but this is just to give you a visual idea of how your annotated bibliography will look. So there's the paragraph, and then you'll see here's the next source citation. And then right after it, not even below it, no spaces or anything, it goes into the next annotation and so on and so forth. Here's another citation. So this is not an essay. There is no argument connected with this. This is just you learning about your topic. You are telling me what your sources say with specific regard to their main idea, claim, support, evidence, assumptions, and your response to them. So do you think this person who wrote this source is disturbing what they have to say? Do you think they offer something really enlightening to say? Do you think it's just interesting? So I just want to hear you work through the sources, because that's a lot of times how academics come to ideas, is they don't automatically jump to a conclusion. Here's my thesis, I've got it. Now I need to go find the research to support what I really want to say. No, we're not cherry picking. We're not just going out there looking for things to support our point of view. We are honestly and openly trying to listen to the opposing view, listen to the history of the issue, trying to learn as much as we can about it so we can make an informed, nuanced claim about it. So this is what this looks like. I'm just scrolling through. You can see at the end. Okay, so we don't need her anymore. So that's your annotated bibliography and what it looks like. And then you're in assignment 4, you will take a stance and argue your research question. So for that student, Amber, her research question was, should marine mammals be kept in captivity? And then her assignment 4, argument essay, took a stance on that. And she argued that her argument was, I still remember, actually was that yes, marine mammals can be kept in captivity. However, changes should be made to the way they are currently housed. So she was saying, there are some things that a lot of these theme parks and museums and aquariums should do to make it more ethical, safer, and humane for mammals in captivity. So these objectives are what I hope you can do after you are finished with this assignment, that you can use the library to investigate an issue. So most students are pretty good using Google, although with all the news about fake news and information literacy in the last year, I don't know, I've doubted all Americans' ability to investigate any issue. I just wonder, I'm not going to be cynical. We have the ability, but we just need the time and the effort, I think, and the critical thinking. We need to put that all forth when we want to investigate something, not just jump to conclusions and find sources that support our own ideas and get ingrained in confirmation bias. Now I'm getting off on my tangent. I'm sorry, guys. I feel very passionate about this, as you can tell. So find and analyze specialized secondary sources. So when I say specialized secondary sources, specialized means you are looking at, again, the creme de la creme of information. So when we're going about our daily lives and we click on something on HuffPost News or on, I don't know, Drudge Report or Yahoo News or something like that, or BuzzFeed News. When we're doing that, or even like BBC, I'm trying to name all kinds of news outlets here, those aren't really specialized sources. That's kind of the popular front line where we get our news snippets, but the specialized information comes from authorities in those fields who are conducting research on those topics and investigating them. So for instance, I might click on an article on foxnews.com that has to deal with I'm trying to think of something interesting in the news right now that has to do with the Zika virus or something like that. That was the virus being spread by mosquitoes, and so maybe we learn, oh, the Zika virus is still out there. It's and mosquitoes, in South Florida, they're still treating for it, and we read about that. That's just a popular source that is meant to inform most people who can read. But the specialized source on that might be when we go to a journal that specializes in health and medicine and we read a report done by a doctor who specializes, maybe it's an entomologist who studies insects and is studying the mosquito or the migration, how we can, make these mosquitoes with the Zika virus disappear. Or maybe it's somebody who is a doctor and they've talked about how to treat patients who are infected with the Zika virus. So those are specialized sources. And secondary just means that's different than primary sources. Primary is when you, as a student or someone, goes and conducts an interview or makes an observation or makes questions for a survey and goes out and finds information that way. That's considered primary research and primary sources. Secondary is when somebody else does it. We'll talk more about popular and scholarly sources. I don't want to get too deep right now with this assignment, but there is a difference between the two, and I expect you to be able to identify it when you go into your annotations on your sources. I expect you to be able to articulate what you find to be agreeable, disagreeable, interesting, or troublesome in the sources. So that's where your response comes in. You need to be able to compose MLA citations, and I'm fine with you using easybib.com or MLAs, or Microsoft Word's citation generator, but just know with those particular automations, you need to put in the right information often in the right place, and so if you don't, you're not going to get the right information back. Whereas with the databases, it's pretty hard to go wrong. They give it to you whole hog, you just have to copy and paste it. And finally, analyze and articulate the differing authorities, credibility, support, and assumptions on the issue. So you did all this with your rhetorical analysis. You were able to take one particular work and say, here is the ethos or the credibility of the arguer, here's their main claim and their support, and then their assumptions on the issue. So, but now I'm asking you to do it in brief, to summarize all that in a paragraph. So my hope is, sorry, I have to exit out of this tab because it's blinking is distracting me. So my hope for you is that this annotated bibliography will be all the research you need to do for your argument essay. You'll find 10 sources and you'll be like, I am totally set. And then you go write your essay in the argument unit, which we have next, and you don't have to go find any more research. However, that said, I've had students whose questions may shapeshift a little bit, and so they end up wanting to find a little bit more or different information when they actually sit down to write their argument essay. Or, same thing, they just didn't know they were going to want to find particular information, and so they end up wanting to find different information. But I think by and large, I would say, I haven't taken a survey on this, but I would say probably about 90% of my students have said that if they follow my guidelines, their research for their argument essay is finished with this assignment. So they don't have to worry about that while they're writing, in the next assignment for the argument paper. So here are the details where it gets nitty gritty for your assignment. So I say you have to have 10 sources total as part of your list, and it has to be in MLA format. Your sources need to offer differing views on your topic. So if your research question is, should marine mammals be kept in captivity? Don't find me 10 sources that all argue yes, they should because it hurts the whales. It makes them, not live as long if they are kept in captivity, because that's redundant. You want to try to find sources that say, you know, it's okay for them to be kept in captivity. You want to try and find sources that say it's not okay for them to be kept in captivity. You want to try and find sources that maybe are objective and just like as neutral as possible and give a report on the situation. And I want to tell you, usually one side is more vocal than the other, right? Usually you'll find a side of dissenters that you'll find more sources on one side than the other. They don't have to be even. You don't have to have five that are for and five against, or, four for, four against, two neutral. I'm not getting that nitpicky here. I'm just saying you want to have differing viewpoints on your topic so you feel like you have a well-rounded view of it. One of the particular aspects, you do want to have at least one source that offers a historical perspective of your issue. So this kind of tells you things like, how long has this issue been going on? When did this issue start? Where did it start? So for some issues, I say this does not have to be comprehensive, because if we talk about something like, I'm trying to think of an issue that has been going on for like a super long time. If we talk about something like abortion, abortion really was going on even before Roe versus Wade in the 1970s, because there were women who were going to homes for unwed mothers. There were women who were having backstreet abortions. There were women who were fighting this fight for a long time. So, or even if we talk about prostitution, right, as another topic, some students have researched the question, should prostitution be legalized? That question, they called it the world's oldest profession for a reason, has been debated for many, 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 many years. And I don't expect you to go all the way back to the beginning and tell me who first, started this argument. But we want to kind of think about, where is the most recent spike in this argument historically, and where should we reach back to? So, if we're talking about something like the legalization of recreational marijuana, well, again, we don't necessarily want to go back to when marijuana was classified as illegal and prohibited and federally and things like that. We might give one sentence about that, maybe two, but we don't want to give a huge, lengthy background on that. We probably want to look at where most recently things have started to change for marijuana. Like, where did it first become legal to use marijuana medically, and then where recreationally, and then, where is the issue at right now? How many states have it legalized? How many states don't? So giving you kind of a current situation overview as well. Now, the one thing I will say is that sometimes arguing historical precedent with some issues or topics is relevant. And so then that history might become more relevant in your argument paper. And you're probably not going to know this until you look into your history and read about it. So, what I was just talking about with recreational marijuana, I had a student who was arguing that it should be legal. And part of his argument, part of his reasoning for why it should be legal, is that they never should have made it illegal in the first place. And so he went back to the process by which it had become or ratified to be illegal, and he kind of poked holes and developed skepticism around how he thought, or sources thought, I shouldn't say he thought, that research showed that there was a political agenda at work that had nothing to do with the drug itself, that had more to do with the political aspirations and the agenda of a few groups than it did the health ramifications of marijuana. Include one book source from the library catalog. So I want you to be able to use the library catalog, and in the research video I show you how to do that. 6 sources from the databases. Again, there's the video on how to research from the databases. Do not just give me all sources from the internet. You need to know how to use the library databases and catalog before you graduate from LSSC, or they're going to take my English teaching certificate away from me. I say from at least 2 different databases because the databases work differently, and I want you to experiment a little bit with them. So don't just go to opposing viewpoints, don't just go to Academic Search Complete. Try to go to at least a couple of them, or JSTOR. Include a maximum of 2 sources from the internet. So I'm not against using sources from the internet. Sometimes the internet is very useful. Things get published on a second-by-second basis there, and sometimes you can find things that you can't find in the databases, and so it's really useful. But I just feel like students already knows how to use the internet, and I really want you to learn how to use the databases, and also understand there is a difference. A lot of times the databases are wonderful because they already vet sources for you for credibility, so you don't have to wonder. When I'm on the internet and I'm on a website I don't recognize, I'm always going, can I trust this? I have no idea. Sources should be varying lengths, so don't just pick all. Like some students will go to there's a newspaper database. Newspaper articles are usually rather short, and so they don't give you the scope that those scholarly articles will, that are often longer. And then this details what your paragraph should include. So in the source, I want to know, what is the source's credibility? You might need to Google the author if you don't know who they are, or if it doesn't give you any information about them in the source. Do they have any experience with this issue? Are they, if they're writing about, unemployment in America, are they an economist? Or are they just a reporter? Now, if they're just a reporter, that's okay. You can still use that source, but you want to know the difference, because as you sort through your sources, you will recognize that some sources are not equal to others. Again, there's like the creme de la creme of information, people who you're getting it as close to the horse's mouth as you can get as far as reliability goes. And it's not like a game of telephone where sometimes you hear something reported over and over again and it loses a lot of its validity, I guess is the best way to say it. The main idea or claim, so if it's neutral, it's going to be what is the main idea of the source. Some of these that you might find are just reporting on an incident or a study that happened, or it's an experiment. That's going to be a main idea. They're not going to have an argument, but if it's argumentative, we would call the main idea the claim. What are the support or reasons and evidence they give? So again, if it's an argument, it's probably going to be reasons, but with evidence. If it's not an argument, if it's neutral or objective, you're just going to have support and evidence. What assumptions does the author make? So you went into this with the rhetorical analysis, and again, you may not have this. If it's a neutral source, if it's a chart or graph, we probably don't see the author making a lot of assumptions. But sometimes there are assumptions even in charts and graphs. They might assume that the audience is familiar with certain abbreviations or with certain terms. So number 4 may or may not be always present in your sources, but please note it if it isn't present. Please say, there were no identifiable assumptions in this source, or the author made no pronounced assumptions, or something like that. And then finally, what you find particularly agreeable, disagreeable, interesting, or troublesome in the source. And then I said, just think about this as 1 sentence per criteria. So you're trying to get about 5 sentences. If you can be briefer than that, then I applaud you. I tend to be long-winded, as some of you are probably guessing from my videos where I'm trying to be brief and failing miserably. But some people, I have read their paragraphs and they can get all that in 4 sentences, and they're not losing anything, and the sentences are readable and they cover the material, and it's fine. If you're one of those people, good for you. All right, so here's a sample annotation, and I'm not going to go through it in detail in the video. I think you can read it on your own and do that. and I think it'd be kind of dry for me to go through. How do I make it so you can see my comment? Maybe enable editing. So I tried to highlight too so you could see the comments like, oh, here's the citation. Oh, here's where, they identify that it's an argumentative source, um, to get you kind of understanding how a sample annotation might work. And this is just one. And in your annotated bibliography, you will have 10 of these. So just be mindful. I don't think, and students have confirmed this to me, this is not a difficult assignment, but it is time consuming because finding the 10 sources usually isn't the biggest part, right? Usually that's pretty doable and pretty quick. The problem is reading the 10 sources, especially the scholarly ones, because those can be anywhere from like 9 to 20 pages in length. You only have to have 2 of those though. And then analyzing the sources, like taking notes on them, okay, this is the claim, this is the evidence, and then summarizing them in your own words. So I'd say, once you start this assignment and get those sources, aim for 1 a day or 2 a day to read and summarize. Otherwise, it just gets overwhelming and it's easy to let it get away from you. Definitely, I mean, I know all assignments are like this, but definitely not one to leave for the last minute and think you're going to do it the night before because it just takes too much time. Okay, where are we? Okay, be careful. Please do not just give me sources that are abstracts. So, abstracts, I should have pulled one up and made it handy here. Let's see if I can find one super fast to show you what I mean by an abstract. So I go to the library, I go to the databases, I go to academic or academic search complete is my favorite. I'll go there. So I go here and they make you put in your XID and your 6-digit birth date unless you've changed it. Oh, I put in my son's there. That's not right. So I'm going to type in, if it ever gets me there, and you can access these databases from home in the middle of the night, any time in the world, as long as you have Wi-Fi's, you should be fine. Oh my gosh, I'm so impatient. Okay, so I'm going to type in what has been the news lately: white supremacy in America. Okay, let's see. So, what is this? National Review. Let's see if this has. So, all of these sources, and especially the scholarly ones, will have an abstract where they summarize the source. And these are really useful because when you're researching to know whether it's a source you want to have or not, you don't want to have to read, especially if it's 10 pages long, 10 pages, and then go, oh no, that's not going to work for my topic. So this helps you to know, oh, okay, this is going to work for my topic. And I just typed in, I feel like I should give some background right now. I typed in white supremacy in America because a lot of the debate at the time I'm making this video is about whether or not we should keep some of the monuments that surround the Civil War and celebrate the Confederacy. Or maybe I shouldn't even say celebrate the Confederacy, memorialize the Confederacy. And so there's debate going on about that right now. So that might be a question is, should these monuments still be kept or should they be taken down? So that's part of the assignment there is that don't plagiarize that abstract. Make sure this is useful to determine whether or not you want to use the source, but do not make sure that doesn't make it into your annotation. Of your 10, at least 2 should be scholarly sources, and you can find scholarly sources even on Google, because there's Google Scholar. Google, no, not gmail.com. So I believe they have it on here. They used to. Google Scholar. Maybe they call it Google Classroom now. If I type in con- if I type in white supremacy here, and then I go to, let's see if they have it here. They may not have it anymore. They used to have something called Google Scholar that sifted through them, and so you could just look for scholarly sources through Google if you wanted to. Maybe if I do it this way, Google Scholar. Okay, so this just searches scholarly sources. So you can see that these sources look a little bit different than the sources we were getting back before. And so those are scholarly sources. And when you're in the databases, like this, and I show you this in a different video, so I'm not going to go into it in detail here, you can even sort for scholarly sources. So when you look through, if you go to advanced search, you can limit your results to scholarly peer-reviewed. It's the same thing, scholarly peer-reviewed, academic. They use the same terms for the sources. They're synonymous. And then you click search. Whatever you get back there is scholarly. So we'll talk more about that later, but that's an overview of that idea. And then you don't have to include sources from the internet if you don't want to. If you want to pull them all from the library databases, except for one from the library catalog, that's fine with me. And then finally, the library has a useful handout to kind of show you how to format your paper. Again, their annotations, you can tell, they are not as long as mine. They do not require the same things I do, but this gives you an idea of how to format it. So I'm going to stop there for this assignment. Hopefully that gives you quite a bit of information to chew on. And after this, you want to go and look over assignment 4 so you can see how they're connected, and then go on to the finding a topic video so you can start picking out a topic of your own. All right, have a good